welcome to Real Talk, episode 73. I'm Todd, this is AJ.
Hey,
we're back.
We're back, better than ever, maybe. I don't know.
Came up the hey-oh, man. You haven't done that in a while.
I know, I used to be, literally, and we use an app called Slack. My description is the hey-oh guy.
I actually forgot about that.
I've put on many more hats since then.
Yes, you have. So, thank you so much for joining us. We hope you stick around for longer than 15 seconds. You know who we're talking to. Let's have a party. Let's have some fun. Let's get real.
Hey.
What is Real Talk? It's an opportunity to talk about life, God, the Bible, and everything in between, and let you guys in on how we process life. And we try to be pretty transparent. Sometimes, in all honesty, we're probably a little too transparent.
Honestly, you want me to be transparent? Every time I take a drink, it gets stuck in my mustache. That's how transparent we are.
Fine, if we're getting transparent, I have a lot of Chex Mixes still all around my mouth.
Listen, if you guys have ever had, honey barbecue Chex Mix, is the greatest Chex Mix ever.
It's pretty good, man, but I like the regular honey Chex Mix as well. It's kind of sweet, salty.
That's fair.
Much like me. Sweet and salty.
You got me, dude.
All right. So,
good one.
We like to start out with real talk, sort of. I don't know. Do you want to talk about our day? Do you want to ask a question and then talk about it? How do you want to do this?
Probably get a couple questions out of the way.
All right. We're going to dive in. Guys, up above, you're going to see a link, or if you're listening from the podcast, just listen. It's www.theremnant, REMNANT.life/real, REAL-talk. You can click that link or type it into your old browser home, on your phone, or any sort of internet device, and it will bring up a page. Go down to submit a question. Form fillable box pops up. Tippity tap. That's you typing. You drop your topic, question, concern, praise, whatever you want.
Boom.
Goes in there completely anonymous. Could not find you if we tried.
Encryption.
Yep. So, we got a lot of great questions. We're really excited to kind of dive in to see what's up. So let's go ahead and take a gander.
Okay.
That's how the cool kids say it.
That's right. Take a gander.
So bear with me for a second, folks. Here we go. I am ready to roll. Here it comes.
Here we go.
With all the craziness going on in our country right now, and people verbally going at each other, how well do you feel Christians in general are doing at living out Romans 12, 9 through 21, or even 1 Corinthians 13 for that matter? Aren't we supposed to be the light and love others? Love others, it says love others see, but let others see your love. And just so we're on the same page, Romans, let me turn it here. Romans 9.
Yep.
12, 9, as it was mentioning, is love must be without hypocrisy, detest evil, cling to what is good, show family affection to one another with brotherly love, outdo one another in showing honor. Do not lack diligence, be fervent in spirit, serve the Lord, rejoice in hope, be patient in affliction, be persistent in prayer. Share with the saints in their needs, pursue hospitality, bless those who persecute you, bless and do not curse. Rejoice with those who rejoice, weep with those who weep, be in agreement with one another. Do not be proud, instead associate with the humble. Do not be wise in your own estimation. Do not repay anyone evil for evil. Try to do what is honorable in everyone's eyes. If possible, on your part, live at peace with everyone. Friends, do not avenge yourselves. Instead, leave room for his wrath. For it is written, vengeance belongs to me. I will repay, says the Lord. If your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he is thirsty, give him something to drink. For in doing so, he'll be heaping fiery coals on his head. And finally, do not be conquered by evil, but conquer evil with good. 1 Corinthians 13, I'm not even going to pull it up, but that is what's commonly known as the love chapter. So love is patient, love is kind.
Right. Keeps no record of wrongs.
Yeah, keeps no record of wrongs.
Okay.
Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things, etc.
So the gist of this question is...
We got a lot of stuff going on in the world.
Right, yes.
How well do we think Christians in general are doing at living this out in the midst of that chaos?
I think in the verse you just read, there's a key point towards the end of it, which was it was keep the peace as best you can, right?
Sure.
I think that the church with a capital C, I think, we're not perfect, and we always mention that, and I'm sure there's churches out there that are doing their best to be involved. Do I think there's some that are probably catering to things they shouldn't be catering to? Yes. Do I think there's people who are probably going a little over the top? Yes. I think it's kind of a melting pot. I think some people might be getting it a little better, doing it a little better than others. But overall, I think we're doing our best. That's one thing I think about Paul.
The Apostle Paul.
Yep, the Apostle Paul. And he mentions he has some people come up and ask him about, well, those people were talking about this and that. And he says, are they preaching Jesus? And let them go. And so when I think about that, I think about the current state of, where we are. And as long as, we're not colliding on, the primary issues of, our core beliefs, I think they are doing the best they can. But do I think there's people out there, as far as churches that might be kind of blurring those lines a little bit? I think that's definitely a possibility.
What do you mean? When you say blurry the lines, what do you mean?
Of the primary issues. Blurring the lines of their core beliefs, kind of like what I said earlier, like catering to the current state of the world when they probably shouldn't.
Yeah. Do you think that, and this is a genuine question, as you're talking, do you think that the church is looking different than the world in the response to the pandemic, in the response to the racial tension we seem to have in this country at the moment? Do you think the church is looking different and set apart, or do you feel like if we're kind of looking the same as the world? Or I guess maybe also with that, and I genuinely am processing with you, I don't know the answer, so I'm curious on your thoughts. I think the second part of that question would be, are we leading or are we following the world's kind of direction in those areas? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So I definitely feel like we are, I don't know, man, it's weird. Like I feel like it's probably like half and half. Yeah. I feel like there's some places that are standing up for it and they're getting a lot of heat for it, and then I think there are churches that are following, and that is showing, because I think in overall in the big picture it's probably confusing people because they can see, hey, this church over here is going like this and this church over here is saying this. They're completely two different things. Why do we want to be a part of this? I think that's why we talk about unity. Do I feel like we're completely unified in this time? No, 100% no.
We're never unified in general.
Yeah, not even in this time. You're right. Yeah. Which is why we have all the sure, and I think that's why we have all these different denominations of the church, the Christian church, and all this and that.
Sure.
Constant divisiveness over the smallest things. Yeah. But yeah, man, I think it's probably a confusing time for people. Even people in the church, in my opinion, they're probably confused themselves because, again, their church might be doing something different than the church down the street. So they're going, what does that mean?
Why is one doing? Yeah, I agree, man. I think when I read those, I agree with you. I think for me, what stands out in this question, it's a big question.
Oh yeah.
So in a way, that section they gave is a big section. It talks about a lot. And as I was reading it, even to you guys, I was going, oh, here's one section, here's this. Ooh. So when I try to always be contextual. What's Paul saying? So in that section that Paul, and particularly in Romans 12, if we look at it individually, he's writing to the church in Rome, meaning the Christians. Mm-hmm. So some of that stuff is Christian to Christian that he's saying. No, it appeals, right? When he says things like, outdo one another, show brotherly affection. Yes, we should do it to everyone else, but remember, he's specifically saying you guys need to do this, be in agreement. Right. And especially, and that fits when you think about what Jesus said, when Jesus said, the world will know you by your love for one another. Yep. The way you love each other as my followers is going to show the world something different. So there's part of that. But then there's the parts that I think kind of apply to everyone, like how we treat everyone. And even in that section where we, don't repay evil for evil, don't seek vengeance. That's one of the things we talked about quite a bit early on in the racial tensions we were having in the kind of when that first happened with George Floyd. One of the questions we kept asking is, as believers, it's so hard to not get sucked up into what the world says justice is and what the world says love is. And so for instance, and I've brought this up before, but there are Christian brothers of mine who I know, they don't attend here, but I know. And I would consider them leaders, and they're justifying violence by saying something's got to make it change. And I understand the heart behind that, but I think it's kind of one of the quotes we've said before is you're taking a lie and painting him with love and calling it truth.
Yep.
And the lie being in this case that God would that Jesus would condone that. Jesus was not, he was radical, but he was radical in the sense that he didn't do that.
Yep.
And that's hard for me to even say because I'm immediately told I don't care about something. Of course, that's like saying Jesus didn't care about the Jews because he didn't free them from the Roman Empire. I heard an argument. I guess I don't want to go too real on this because I could. I've heard people who make the argument, well, you should be like Jesus. Yeah, well, they killed Jesus, meaning that's ridiculous that you would ask that of us when they killed him. Well, that's the point of the call. It is radical. So do I think, I look at it two ways. Do I think the church, we talk, I love the church.
Yeah.
The capital C. I love, because no matter how dirty it gets, sometimes it's still gold.
Absolutely.
Because of him, it's still refined. It's beautiful. And in that imperfection, we're all imperfect. We talked about this the other day. All these imperfect people are coming together that God has brought together to make this body.
Yep.
And the imperfections don't show as much when we're together.
That's
right?
really good,
because
man.
it's sort of we mask it and like where you're weak, maybe I'm strong. Where I'm weak, maybe you're strong, and like it's a beautiful thing. So I don't know. We've seen some beautiful things. I remember early on when we were talking about doing some of the good news segments before John Krasinski stole our idea, because we did have it first. So hey John, feel free to call us.
Still bitter, John.
We love you, buddy. We saw people, continuing to feed people during free meals for. There's a local church that does that, free meals to people. Shout out to the Warehouse for doing that. It's a local church that does that here in town.
Pretty cool.
And they kept doing that as far as I know.
Wow.
And they were doing carry-out meals, stuff to try to still honor the quarantine, but to be able to still provide for people.
Right.
There's churches now that have sort of come together in this community who are doing sort of a family event, and so they're trying to give that hope. And I think that's all beautiful stuff. So, yeah, absolutely. I think you said it. We're not perfect. The area that I think that maybe we're struggling with is two areas. One, are we trying to repay evil for evil?
Yeah.
What are we showing? Two, the watering down of the truth. So the Christians out there, if you're a Christian leader and you have justified violence and rioting, not in self-defense, because that's not what we're talking about. Right. I'm talking about literally going out and burning buildings and destroying property.
Yep.
If you are justifying that because you call it love to want to make change through violence, you're wrong. And I'm going to tell you straight to your face, you were wrong, and you need to go back and read the Bible and go read Jesus. And I don't mean that in a hateful way, but go read the Gospel of John, and you'll see a guy who refused to do that. And he changed the entire world with radical love. And, as it says here, and we've got to remember that as Christians, yes, we stand up for truth and justice, but not at the expense, for justice, but not at the expense of truth, and not at the expense of love. So I know I'm a talker, sorry folks. But I think, so that's the one area. And then the third is, we've always said this, I think we can continue to strive to be more unified.
Yes.
And it's going to be hard because we're all broken and just the system. And I do think God has taken all of this division and he still uses it. It's a beautiful thing, meaning different churches are still reaching different groups of people for Jesus.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
But yeah, I still think we tear each other down a lot. And
yes, we do.
And when there's a stumble, I felt this way for a long time about Christianity in general. When someone stumbles, more often than not, the culture is dependent on the severity of the sin. If it's the big ones everyone sees, right?
Right.
I don't know, adultery. That's the big one. Any kind of sexual sin, pornography, stealing. The things which these are all, they're not good. We get it. They're sin.
Right.
But we tend to cast people out instead of doing what Jesus told us in Matthew 18 and numerous other places about walking it out.
Yeah.
So I think we can continue to do better at that and show the world what that looks like. And be a leader in things. Like I say this to myself, and I'm sure you feel this way maybe. But yes, we can't necessarily control when we get anxious. The world is a crazy place right now. It really is. But I think I also show something to the world by the level of peace that I have in the midst of that. Because if I believe this, and it always goes back to what we say, if it's real, he told us things are going to get worse before they get better.
That's true.
And that he will come back and he'll fix it. And Our future is secure, and your future is secure if you know Jesus. So I didn't mean to ramble on that.
Amen,
I think
dude.
that's a great question.
Oh, yeah.
Because we're
Great
in those
question.
times.
Yes,
And what is our response? I love this. Whoever asked this question, I love that you brought those two sections out, though, because I think your heart is right on there. I don't know who you are, but for you to be going, man, we need to focus on loving people and taking care of people and not worrying about all this, the rest of it. I think that's beautiful.
I love that. I got nothing else to add there, man. That was awesome.
You want to read one?
Sure.
You're probably tired of hearing my voice.
Whatever.
I feel like I talked last. I should read it again so you can talk.
Okay. That was a weird laugh.
That was the
It came out weird.
strangest.
I went to go ha ha ha, and the last ha went way up.
This question kind of seems to go with it. Everywhere you turn, anger and hatred are spewing. On the street corners and news broadcasts, social media, and so on. How are we, as Christians, to give soft, gentle answers that stop all of this in its tracks, as Proverbs 15:1 and 2 would indicate is possible? You looked that up.
Yeah.
I have that top, Proverbs 15:1 and 2. Any tips on how to live this out in daily life? So the gist of it is, as we all know, man, there is a lot of hatred, a lot of, whether it's between politics, it seems like everyone's being kind of forced on these opposite sides. Some of that I'm not sure we can fix, but what do we do? And it says, was it 1 and 2? Right?
Yep.
A gentle answer, Proverbs 15:1 and 2, is a gentle answer turns away anger, but a harsh word stirs up wrath. The tongue of the wise makes knowledge attractive, but the mouth of fools blurts out foolishness. So, essentially, how do we handle that? How do we stop adding to that hatred as Christians?
I think it's important.
Great question.
I think it's important to remain consistent.
Oof, that's so good, man. That's really good, actually.
Yeah, it's important to remain consistent no matter who you're talking to.
That's so good.
And that kind of goes back to being unified as a church, because
Truth bomb.
that's how a lot of people think about like just using an analogy here as like a kid, right, between mom and dad. Like they'll go like, "Hey mom, can Timmy stay over?" She goes, "No," and then she's like, "Oh, well, I'll ask Dad." And Dad's like, "I don't care, sure." And all of a sudden, I got Timmy staying over because the parents were unified in that moment because the kid took advantage of the fact that they were apart. So, so it's kind of similar to that. You got to remain consistent in how your beliefs are and how you convey those to people, I guess. Yeah, I think that's huge. As far as how do you do that, it's kind of like what we said on that last question, like making sure you're telling people the truth, but telling them in love. That doesn't mean you have to condemn people. It doesn't have to mean you have to go like, "You're going to hell." Like, you don't have to do that kind of thing. Like, it's just, hey, this is the truth, and I love you.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good, man. The consistent thing's great. I really like that. And not changing because then it looks like you don't really believe what you say anyway.
Exactly.
As for me, I really think of one thing when I think of all this. So the hatred and all that stuff. The Bible says, paraphrasing, but always have an answer or a reason for your faith. Mm-hmm. So when someone talks to you, let them know. And I love that you said, how can we? I don't necessarily think that we can stop it. And even in Proverbs there, I think that we can not add to it. And the way we don't add to it is exactly what it said there, is a soft answer. There are things that I disagree with in this world. I certainly have a political stance. I have things that I believe. If I meet someone on the street, or maybe even a friend who believes completely opposite of that, why does that mean that I can't still love them? And what's more important, changing their mind or loving them? And so for me, I pick my battles a lot. If I'm meeting someone on the street, am I really going to change their mind by yelling at them?
Nope.
Am I going to change their mind, by telling them how dumb they are?
Nope.
No. I think the best thing you can do, I love what you said, that's so good. Be consistent. Certainly you can share truth, but you can't control the outcome of you sharing things. I think a lot of times in our culture, what's happening is people are sharing their opinion, but they're trying to control the outcome. Okay, here's my opinion. And you go, that's nice. You're like, no, now I want you to believe that. You will agree with that. I'm like, well, what if that doesn't happen? Well, you're an idiot, or whatever else it is.
Right.
You're evil. So I think the better answer is, the world needs Jesus. So what's our overall goal? Guys, this is what's hard. Our identity is not in politics. Our identity is not our overall identity. Certainly, let me finish that sentence. It's not even in our nationality. If you are a follower of Jesus Christ, first and foremost, you are a Christian. And Paul says this many times, there is no male, female, Jew, Gentile. That's not saying gender doesn't matter. That's not the context. I just want to make that clear. But they're saying, like, at the end of the day, the most important thing is, are you with Jesus? Are you a believer?
That's right.
And so sometimes, man, we can win the battle and lose the war in the sense of I can win an argument, but at what cost?
That's really convicting.
So, and listen, that's coming from a guy, anyone that doesn't know me, you know this. I'm very opinionated.
Mm-hmm.
I've had to train myself, and I fail, so I have to train myself to not speak into everything. And, another verse that comes to mind sometimes, this isn't insulting anyone, but don't throw your pearls before swine. Some people aren't going to hear the truth. They're not in a place of that. So live it out and be consistent.
Mm-hmm.
Hope that answers your question.
Me too. Good stuff, man.
Because I do think that will people are going to ask, like, why are you not mad about this?
Right.
Listen, I can't control it.
Boom. You never know how you're going to impact somebody's life.
It's the truth, man. I just had this, close family member of mine, came to know Jesus recently. We just baptized him.
Surreal.
And I'm telling you right now, the most humbling part is I probably had over the years big debates and tried to tell them how they're wrong. And it's like none of that did it.
Mm-hmm.
No, God did it on his own. Do I think that my consistency, hopefully, can at least he could see I believe that?
Kept him on the right path.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
or at least see that I try to live this out. But
right.
It wasn't my arguing.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus did it. That's what
Yep.
he does. Point people to the one that can change people.
So good.
Anyway, I guess we can dive into how we're feeling. How you doing today, man?
I'm decent. I think been doing some thinking with a good old noggin, and I think that I'm in a
good old noggin. That's awesome.
I think that I've come to a weird place that it's hard to explain. I think that I still, and again, I don't know, man. For me, I think that this is something that I may struggle with until I die. Who knows? But struggle with the idea of, understanding my value. And when I can't understand my value, that leads me down to a whole bunch of different places where I struggle with. And I'm starting to realize that those branches they're a lot more than I thought. So because I don't fully understand my value and who I am in Jesus, and I relate myself to my past a lot, that makes me sad. So that makes me sad. That makes me feel like I don't deserve a future. That makes me feel like I don't really have an identity, even though it's weird because it's like in my head I know I do, but in my heart I don't, because I relate it so much back to who I used to be. So then that makes me wonder, do I deserve anything I have? Why do I find myself so, like, I don't want to say overly sad. Why do I find myself, I guess, extra sad when I think about like the past or people in my past or whatever? Because I can think about the future, and it's not like, I guess it makes me a little anxious, but like not terribly. But when I think about the past, I'm like big sad. Like, it's crazy. So it makes me wonder. I guess it's interesting, and that's just tip of the iceberg. That's just one direction of my life. Like, because I don't see my value in myself, that's what that does. While you have all these other ones too. So because I don't value myself or don't understand my true value, I can feel like I don't do as well in life, so then how does that affect me? Well, then that makes me feel like I'm worthless, so it just goes from branch to branch, and I'm like, wow, like, how crazy is that to think that, I'm thinking here, like, man, I'm living pretty free, and I'm like, no, I'm not, because we talk about freedom on here a lot, and this isn't like, supposed to be like depressing or anything, but it's more like just the human condition, I guess. Like, we are just so constantly caught up that we don't even realize it half the time. And so for me, when I try to think of like what is living intentionally, I think I don't very often. I think I let my preconceived notion of what my value is run a lot of who I am. So that's fear. I'm fearful because I don't think I am good enough. Or
so, are you afraid people are going to finally see it too? Like, you're kind of like, I'm fooling them, and eventually they're going to see that I'm not.
It can feel that
I'm
way.
not good at this.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
not.
100% it can feel that way.
And then once they do, they're done with me, kind of deal, or.
That's what's weird is I don't know if I've ever felt like people were going to abandon me, but I definitely felt like people were just going to be like, yeah, well, here he is. Like that's the real him, I guess. You know, just disappointment, I guess. That's something I struggle with is the idea of being a disappointment to somebody. I've had a lot of issues with that in my past. So I think when I think about those things, it makes me wonder how much, because again, I've said this 1,000 times on the show is, you know, we're always our biggest critic. You know, we're always the hardest on ourselves. And so for me, I'm like, man, like why can't I guess, why can't I see that? It makes me question myself all the time, and I live in fear, or I don't. Sometimes I wonder, you know, what my best effort looks like, and I think since I'm asking that question, I don't think I am giving my best effort. You know, like all that kind of stuff. So again, not to be like I'm not depressed or anything, but it's more like just when I actually sit and think and actually let the noise slow down, because that's so much of my life is just noise, so much noise constantly. When I actually take a moment for that noise to settle, I can actually think about these things. And I think that's part of my process of trying to get heal, I guess, because if you just sit there and there's just constant noise and you're just kind of running around not thinking about these things, like it adds up. And I think that's what I did so much of my life was just the noise was always there, and I didn't process. So I guess the older I get, the more I'm trying to process things, even if it is from my past or, you know, now or whatever. So I don't know if this is making any sense, but
Yeah, I kind of think two questions to ask.
Sure.
One is there. That's a good man. Do you think there's is there a trigger? Because I know you. Like is there a trigger for these thoughts to get stronger, or you just start beating yourself up more? Kind of starts the spiral.
I think it's situations, I think. So like if I put myself in a situation where I know I've failed at something before, I automatically feel like the next time I go into it, I'm going to mess something up. So that's something that I struggle with. So when I do make a mistake, if I'm put in that same position where I've made a mistake before, if I'm going to make a mistake again, I'm trying to think if there's anything else.
The other thing is, you know, what does life look like? Because I do think you're right, and something that I wrestle with too is the idea of being free. You know, we had a talk with another guy this week, and you know, Jesus said, "Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." If you're not feeling light and unburdened, then we're not free to a degree, right? We're not living free because Jesus already said He's going to take that. So, you know, what does living free look like for you? What would it like? What do you think life would be like if you were free? Or, you know, imagine this world. AJ's free. He feels free. What's different?
I don't think I wouldn't be so worried about the next thing. I think that's one of my biggest issues is so caught up in everything all the time that, you know, I never focus on the moment. And I think that's why I can feel like there's so much noise around, because I can't just focus.
Yeah.
It's like one of those, you know, you just kind of, it feels like you're kind of like just like speeding through life, not slowing down. And even when you do slow down, there can still be, because you are used to that, because I am used to that.
Yeah.
So that even the moments where there is like a chance, that's not always taken, because you're it's not your natural state. Your natural state is just to keep going.
So, what is something that you think you can do tangibly? Because you can't control necessarily what you feel like. Reality is, I think you said it, you may wrestle with that feeling for the rest of your life.
Right.
But you don't have, you know, we can choose to not live out of it to a degree. So, what's like one tangible thing you think, you know, I can start doing this to live the way I don't feel, which is free? Does that make sense?
I always wrestle with the idea of like, and I don't know if this is a cop out or not, but I always feel like if I were to just tell people, it would help. But I also feel like I don't want to be that guy who's literally like every day the first thing I'm like is like, hey, I'm scattered. I don't know, like every single day.
Do you think that would actually happen for the rest of your life? Or do you think that, what if it took 2 weeks, but then eventually with the help of someone else? It's kind of like if you broke your leg and you're paralyzed, and every day you're like, hey man, can you help? Every day you're like, can you help me to the table? Is that wrong?
No.
No, because, or maybe it's a better example would be a broken, but that's a good example too. Maybe it never will change, but let's say it does. It's a broken leg. I broke my leg, man.
Yep.
My back. Was it wrong of me to ask you? I'll use my back, right? A couple
Yeah.
weeks ago. Was it wrong of me to ask you guys to help me? What if I had to ask you for 2 weeks every day?
I wouldn't have cared.
Okay, and eventually, yeah, you wouldn't have cared for one, but and two, eventually, I would be able to walk again, right? I was
That's
able.
true.
I'm walking right now, and I think, you're sort of. You got to ask yourself what the root of this is, but it's like you're taking away the opportunity for people to love you because you think you'll be annoying to them, which is really just a continuation of this cycle of not seeing value in yourself.
Yep.
So, carrying each other's burdens in this way, fellow law of Christ. Like, okay, carrying your burden with you might take longer than a week.
Yeah.
Like where's this pressure we all have, and you're not the only one I do too, to like have everything figured out and fixed in a day. Again, if you want to go back to Scripture, let's look at Peter. If Jesus had given up on Peter, first time, second time, third time, fourth time, fifth time, he said something or did something or asked for help, he would have never got there. That Jesus was in there to love him for the long haul. And I know me, I know intern Clint, a lot of these guys, man, we love you, and you don't have to. It's not going to annoy us, especially because you're trying to battle this thing. It'd be one thing if you're like, hey, I'm scattered, I'm just going to sit here forever, But you're not. You're like, man, and we'll figure it out together. Maybe between that, sometimes you need that perspective of someone looking in on it going, hey, you know what, man? I noticed the last 3 days that you said that XYZ happened. Maybe this is something we can see. But, even that, you're afraid. So you said this statement, I could share with people more, but I don't want to be that guy.
Yeah.
Because somehow being that guy to you is low value.
I guess it's like a...
That makes sense?
Oh, 100%. Like, I think... I get so focused on wanting to just let others speak that I'm like, I don't, whatever. Like,
Yeah, I mean, I guess
Like-
it's real talk. Like, yeah, I do think that's part of it, but I've seen you. Sometimes you just don't do it. Like, I've watched people talk to you, and dude, you're off in your own world because you don't want to say it. You're distracting. So yeah, I do
is
think
true.
that's
I'll admit
part
to
of
that.
it. But maybe part of it too is just you just said it. There are times you probably think about saying it. So let's focus on those times. Let's focus on the times that you which I think that's great, man, beautiful. Sometimes I want to let people talk. Okay, cool, I get that. What about the times that people are listening and you're not talking?
That's really good.
And it's a value thing. I think that's a really powerful statement. So I can tell you you're valuable enough to me that I would want to hear that stuff.
Thanks, man.
And I know intern Clint's nodding his head, and I believe him. So, dude, you're an awesome guy, and we're here to walk this out with you, dude. And sometimes I think sometimes this stuff comes in waves.
Oh, yeah.
Like, maybe you won't deal with it your entire life constantly, but maybe there'll be seasons that you do.
That makes sense.
And that's coming from a guy that has the same exact struggle as you. I look back on things I've done,
Yep.
and it's so hard to ever feel like I'm worthy of anything good, And that's where we have to cling to that promise. Even and what Jesus says, even when the world may tell us otherwise.
I always try to envision, like, what it would be like. We talk about childlike faith, like, that trust of, like, good old Greg. Greg, if you're watching, shout out to you. That picture he sent of, it was his granddaughter just, like, jumping, like, and just, like, being caught. And I was like, man, that's so good because, like, there's
was
just
little.
no fear, nothing. And I was like, man, it's so crazy that the more we're in this world, the longer we're in it, the more, like, we fall away from that. It's so crazy. It's kind of creepy. But yeah, I appreciate it. That's one thing I do need to do is I need to, when I am feeling that way, I think I get worried, I guess. I get worried that that's my constant state, so that's annoying.
What if it is for a while?
That's terrible.
It doesn't mean it is forever. Yeah, but it's no different than, what if I, Lord forbid, what if I had been paralyzed?
Yeah.
Would you have walked away eventually because it was such a pain to be around me? It's the same thing,
Yeah.
And for you, but I'd have to ask myself a question: what if I was? It's a terrible. That is a real fear. I get it.
Yeah. So that's kind of where I'm at. Anyways, enough about me.
No, that was good, man. I appreciate you sharing all that with people,
Yeah.
being transparent. And I guarantee you there's people out there who struggle with the same thing, which is understanding their value and letting their past kind of haunt them and define them. And it gets even worse when people around you sometimes may say something that aligns with your view of yourself from the past, right? So, like, you do something, there's something from your past, you're calling yourself something in your head, because we do that, and then someone else says the same word, and it's almost, that's eerie.
That is eerie.
So,
Man, I never even thought about that.
I think for me, man, I'm in the same place as you. As far as I've really been, and you can attest to this, I've brought it up many times, the idea of being free. And a lot of it is the past for me, but also I don't know if you've noticed this weird thing I've been doing lately. I've been verbally bashing myself a lot.
Yeah, you have been.
Like almost more than normal. And it's almost creepy. And I do it. What's really creepy about it, and I mean seriously, guys, it sounds funny, and I kind of make it a joke.
Yeah.
But a few times when you guys have said it, I haven't said anything, but I've sat and thought about it, like, oh my gosh, like I would never say that to you or to Clint, and I just said that out loud about myself. It's just a creepy. Like, where's that coming from? It's like I have to verbalize these things I'm hearing. So I've been struggling with that too, or like if I make a mistake, so I'm like, oh, now probably everyone thinks I'm gonna attack them, or everyone thinks I'm gonna. What if no one really likes me? They just feel bullied, or these are various thoughts, and that ties in with my overall consideration of like, man, I want to be free, to live in complete peace of who I am, like Jesus did. That I think that's what partly got him through a lot of the tough times where people hated him, which it clearly bothered him because he's human. But he was like, I know who I am, even when the world says I'm not. And for me to live in that freedom, it's funny you brought that up. That's been kind of my big goal lately, is because for me, I think freedom is tied to trusting God and believing Him. Because if I do, then I would truly live free. Because my trust in Him, if I truly trusted Him and what He said, then I would not be afraid even when I mess up, because I know that He's still with me. I know that He has my good. I know that He's going to defend me and avenge me eventually. That sounds like, against my enemies. It means that even if people say things about me that aren't true, or say things that are true about but maybe they try to make it my identity, He says my identity is already set. And I think if I could learn to really live out of that, not only, and I'm being serious, these are my thoughts, not only would I live free, but I would be so much better at loving people.
Yes.
Because their response to my love wouldn't matter. The thoughts wouldn't distract me from loving even better. Does that make sense? Like, because sometimes when you're beating yourself up, it can distract you from focusing on other people.
Yeah, you're right, man. That's so freaking good. Oh my gosh, that's me, man. Like, man, that is convicting, because that's kind of what I was trying to process as you were talking about that. Was like, man, when you just, it almost feels like the old me in a way of, because the old AJ was all about, he would care for people, but for selfish gain. Like, it's almost like I'm only loving these people because I hate myself, and that's still a justification of like,
I get it.
Like I don't know.
They'll give me value,
Sure,
or they'll think good of me enough to outweigh what I really am, or what I view myself.
And that's still not right. Yeah. So maybe that's where I live sometimes, and that's not good.
So dude, I get it. And so for me, I guess I'll leave you guys, because I don't want to just share with you the struggle.
Yeah.
So how do I do that? Like, what am I doing? Well, one is I have got to start. Guys, we've got to do what God tells us to do. We call it disciplines. I'm going to start calling it lifelines. We've got to start using the lifelines God's given us. Prayer and being in the Word and doing the things He says to do. Even loving people. I think there's something about, I think God knows us. And He knows that when we live out of our purpose, it's harder to hear all that stuff. And our purpose is to love God and love others. So that's doing the things He tells us to do, serving the poor, and weeping with those who weep, rejoicing with those who rejoice, being a light. If I'm out there loving people radically like Jesus, I don't have a lot of time to hate myself. And if we would do that, man, it would change things. So that's one thing I'm doing is I need to get back to, I used to, a couple areas that I was strong in. One is prayer. I was always strong in because the verse of praying unceasing or praying without ceasing, I do that all the time. Just walk around and talk to God. You guys might have walked by and heard me mumbling to myself. I'm praying. Yeah, you've heard me say that? Yeah, I say that to him, man. Or even like sometimes I'll be like, sorry, Lord, or thank you, all these things. That part I get. I need to get back to, I'm in the Word a lot, but a lot of times it's for what I'm doing. And I need to get back to making that and giving myself time to enjoy being in the Lord's presence and not rushing from thing to thing.
Yep.
And finally, the thing I tell a lot of the guys in our Lionheart group even is something to give you guys out there if you struggle with the same thing, something tangible to do. If you're struggling with your identity, is have an anchor verse. I call it an anchor verse. That's a verse that anchors you to the truth. It's if you only have one, at least you have something to say to yourself when the lies get loud. And so for me, for the longest time, that verse was Romans 8:1. There is no condemnation in Christ.
That's so good.
And then eventually Romans 8:1 and 2, because the second part is beautiful too, because the Spirit has set me free from the law of sin and death. And there is no condemnation in Christ. And that's, for me, my anchor verse. So I encourage you guys out there, if you've been struggling lately with your identity, with self-hatred, with all those things, you need to go, and I'm going to tell you this because you don't like to be told what to do. You're an American, probably, maybe not, but if you're listening, we do have people in other countries.
Yeah.
But, hey, guess what? Memorize one verse, a verse that speaks to you. Maybe it's a verse that tells you who you are. Maybe it's a verse that says you are a co-heir with Christ. Mm-hmm. That's another one of mine. I'm a co-heir with Christ. Jesus looks at me and says, if he said this to Jesus and I'm a co-heir to Jesus, he's saying it to Todd. This is my son with whom I am well pleased. Those are things that can change your life. And I promise you, that's something that I held on to in the midst. One of these days, I should probably tell you my whole story someday. But one of the things that I clung to when my life was falling apart was doing that. I would literally sit there and say it out loud to myself. So having an anchor verse and saying that to myself again. And for you too, man, have an anchor verse to remind yourself who you are.
That's really good. I've never even thought about that.
Yeah.
I like that idea.
So that's what we're doing, man. It sounds like both of us are trying to just be free and live free. Because Jesus set us free, and it doesn't matter who. It doesn't matter if it's our best friends. It doesn't matter if it's me and you. It doesn't matter if it's this pastor down the road. It doesn't matter if it's the pastor of the biggest church in the world. It doesn't matter who it is. They cannot change who we are, and they cannot imprison us again, because the Bible says, whom the Son sets free is free indeed. We're free. And you are free. If you know Jesus out there, it doesn't matter what you feel. What are you free from? You're free of condemnation, shame, guilt. You're free. You can be free of worry. All those things you are free of. And you are free of your past. You are even free of your present mistakes, and you are free of your future. And man, if we live like that, it frees us to do a lot of good in this world and be lights. That's what I think.
Preach, brother.
Yeah, that's all I got.
That's it.
I think it's a pretty good episode.
Yeah, man.
What's our time looking here, intern Clint? If you guys are listening. Oh, yeah, it's a good one.
Nice.
I guess we'll wrap her up. We had a lot of great questions. If you asked a question and didn't get answered today, you can tune in Thursday to Real Talk Live, where we go live at 9 p.m. to usually about 10:30, and we will answer all of these. If not, we will also come back next week on episode 74, Lord willing, and we will answer any of those there. We do answer your questions. So here's the thing. If you're like, no, you didn't, I bet we did, and you just didn't watch that episode. We can see who's watching. So, no, we can't. We can't see individually, but we can see the number. People are like, what? So, tune in. Hey, guys, watch the whole thing. Join us, because it's not just for our ego. When you guys watch the whole thing, there's a possibility that something is going to be stirred in your mind to drop in the comments below that's going to encourage someone else. And we've noticed that in Real Talk.
100%.
You guys join the conversations, and you make impact and minister to other people.
That's right. That's what this is all about. We're a family.
Yeah, buddy. All right. Got anything you want to say?
Thank you guys for listening, especially to me. I just,
hey, man, you're worth it.
Yeah. So appreciate you guys working on that. So thank you for watching. You guys mean the world to me. This would have never been possible without your guys' continued support. So make sure you guys like this, share this video, comment on it with some thoughts that you guys have in mind. And if you're on the podcast listening, thank you guys so much for listening. There is a link in the description of the podcast if you guys want to leave any thoughts as well at www.theremnant.life/real-talk. Go ahead and leave those there. And I appreciate y'all. Thank you.
Awesome. Did you say the podcast? I missed that part.
Briefly.
Guys, essentially, I'm sure he did. I was in zone thinking about what he said. But you also, if you watch this whole video, you probably enjoy videos. But we are on every podcast format as well. Just go in and type Real Talk Web Series. It's going to pop up. Click it and listen on the go anytime. Leave us a review. We'd really appreciate it. And listen, if you're listening to this whole thing, would you drop a comment below? Let us know your thoughts. Do you resonate with that? Are you someone that struggles? Do you have an anchor verse that has always encouraged you that might encourage someone else? Do you have any tips for people who might be struggling with self-hatred? Because, man, as Christians, I think we all do. And I think that's a big tool of the enemy. We would love to hear you join the convo.
Join the convo.
Also, to let you guys know, those who drop the comments, we are filming our first episode, again, Lord willing, probably tonight or this week of the Round Table.
That's right. Round table happening.
It's good. Yes, it is. It's going to be pretty... I'm pretty excited about it. We don't know where it's going to go. It's
going to be interesting, man. It's going to chop it up. It's going to get real.
I thought you were going to say real weird.
Could.
But yeah, we've been throwing around some ideas, man. Of even doing one. We go down some crazy rabbit holes.
We really do.
And so, for instance, I can throw it out there. We still have to finish this. Clint was with us, right?
Yeah.
Clint, me, you, and Clint watched.
I think production guy Blake for a minute.
He dropped in and acted like he cared, but didn't. But we were into Hitler and his pursuit of the occult and the spear of destiny.
The spear of destiny,
which is the spear that supposedly pierced Christ's side. Weird stories with that.
Oh, yes,
with his obsession with it. Why am I telling you this? I don't know. Other than maybe that'll come out.
We'll see.
It's pretty interesting stuff. The world's just an interesting place, man. People.
There's so much to it.
People are looking for something beyond this world, regardless. So we're about to go into another episode right now. All right, anyway, we love you guys so much. We appreciate you. Please, continue. Engagement matters. What's engagement on social media? That's liking, sharing, commenting, all those things that you guys, so many of you do. Thank you. Would you please like, share, drop a comment below. We appreciate it. And if you're listening from the podcast, we want you to know how much we appreciate you. Give us a review. It would mean a lot if it's a good one. If not, forget about it. Otherwise, we hope you guys have a great day. And truly, God bless you.